everyone, welcome to my review of Daredevil Born Again Season 1. Yes, Season 1, because Marvel may have actually finally wisened up and know that you need to make multiple seasons of a TV series instead of these mini-series that they have been doing for so long. And he's back! Daredevil's back after like 8 years. It's been 8. It's been about 8 years, I'd say, since we had Daredevil Season 3, and this series is, it's so muddy. At least this season is very stitched together, because initially, Marvel was not gonna use Daredevil, the original series. They were just gonna reboot the whole thing with Daredevil Born Again, and then I guess everyone decided it was garbage, so Marvel fired everyone, except for obviously the actors, but the whole creative team, and hired a new creative team who could actually respect the original Daredevil. Which is also why some small things in this series don't really make sense, but that's because of the fact, like we don't have Mahoney. He's not in the show. But that's because of the fact that, you know, it wasn't supposed to be connected to the Netflix stuff. Simple as that. But that new team came in and decided to do a small overhaul of this season. Kind of just like taking the season and just adding some stuff. But then also having the first and the 8th and the 9th episode for themselves. Those are entirely new and you can indeed see the quality. And the old people basically have episodes 2 through 7 with some changes here and there. Small changes here and there. You know, like there are certain things that the new crew did to kind of connect it a bit more. Just some stuff like that. Or, you know, redo an entire action sequence because, as we will see with episode 7, it would have been garbage. Yes, indeed. But let's just get into it. So, Daredevil Born Again takes place technically after Season 3 of Daredevil, but it also takes place after Spider-Man No Way Home, She-Hulk, Hawkeye, Echo, mainly Echo though, but it takes place after all of that. Do you need to have seen those things? No, not really. I mean, She-Hulk is entirely irrelevant to this thing. The only thing we really get as a connection to She-Hulk, I guess, is the fact that we see the yellow helmet in this show that he wore in, the yellow suit that he wore in She-Hulk. That is the only, like, connectivity thing with She-Hulk. Like, she's never mentioned. Spider-Man No Way Home is a really good movie, so I would recommend you watch that, but there's no... It doesn't really have a lot to do with this series, but the big one, also, Hawkeye is actually more of a watch, because there's a character from Hawkeye that will appear in the show, so, or this season, so it might actually be worth watching Hawkeye. And Echo, weirdly enough, is also not entirely useful at all. I mean, basically at the end of Echo, Fisk is like, I'm gonna run for mayor. And that's what he does. He wins the mayoral thing and becomes mayor of New York, and now Daredevil basically has to fight the mayor, which is no easy task, let me tell you that much. But like the other stuff, it's not necessarily all that important for this, but do you need to watch the Netflix stuff? Oh yeah. You're not gonna know any connections that they make to the Netflix stuff if you don't watch that show. By the way, even though everyone calls it the Netflix stuff, it is out on Disney+. So you don't need to get a separate streaming service. It's all on Disney+. You can watch it. But like the connection to Karen and Foggy that we have in episode 1, or like Bullseye that we get later on, and even stuff that gets said in like episode 9. It's like if you haven't watched season 3, this is technically season 4, even though it's a bit muddy, like I said. It's a bit stitched together. So let's get into the characters. So starting off, we have Charlie Cox back as Matthew Murdock, aka Daredevil, and this man does not lose a beat, I swear. He is such a phenomenal actor because he doesn't lose a beat. He knows how to play Matt Murdock, and he just picks it up immediately, just like he gets into gear. And no matter what episode, no matter how bad this show can get sometimes, he is still an outstanding actor. He is fantastic in this role. However, because of a traumatic event that happens early on in this series, he has hung up the cowl, sadly enough. So for the beginning part of the season, now I have seen people be upset, so I will do a small spoiler, but it's not really a big spoiler at all. It's more like just when Daredevil will come back. That is episode 5. Yes, you heard me correctly. Episode 5 is when Daredevil comes back. So before that, he is without the suit. He is just Matthew Murdock trying to do his thing and kind of try to keep the devil locked up inside of him. However, as we all know, that is not going to work. And I love the struggle that Matt has, trying not to be Daredevil, even though he desperately wants to, but he has to pretend that he doesn't. Then next up, we have Vincent D'Onofrio back as Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. Now this man has not necessarily lost a beat because he's been in the entirety of Echo. Well, not the entirety, but he's been in Echo. So he has been Kingpin for a while. Anyway, just like Matthew Murdock, Wilson Fisk also has decided to leave the moniker of Kingpin behind because he is now running for mayor and actually wins the race at the end of episode 1, and that's the big plot line. Now you may be like, after season 3 of Daredevil, how is it possible that he is mayor? That is explained, kind of. I would say badly, but they do give it an attempt at an explanation in episode 9. The explanation doesn't fully work, but overall, you know what, you can kind of hand wave it away because of the fact that it was the old crew and they already set this up before Daredevil Born Again came out, because I think it was like in January of last year when Echo came out. So they had the storyline of Fisk being around for like a while, because like in 2021 we saw Fisk in Hawkeye. Then we saw him in Echo in 2020, that came out in 2024. So they can't really put that genie back in the bottle, even though they wanted to reboot everything. If you want to connect everything, we need an explanation. And we get that one in the final episode, because that is part of the new people who actually want to connect. So he was running for mayor, and he has left the life of Kingpin behind. But just like the devil, the king will also return eventually. You can't lock that up. Kingpin, or Fisk, I guess, he is a criminal through and through. And it's actually pretty cool to see him try to be normal, and it just doesn't work, and he unleashes the beast once again. It is very nice to see. And like I said, Vincent D'Onofrio once again does a fantastic job. Then we have another character that appears in this season that we already know about. And he doesn't appear a lot. He's got 2 episodes to his name. But I would like to also talk about Jon Bernthal being back as Frank Castle. And he does a fantastic job as well, just being back in the shoes of Frank Castle. The interactions he has with Matt are great. And initially, Jon Bernthal didn't want to come back as Frank Castle because of the fact that, you know, it was garbage. The old crew made stuff that Jon wasn't a fan of, so he was like, I'm not coming back as Frank Castle. That goes to show how much the new people are, how good the new people are. But he does also a really good job in the episodes that he has, especially with his interactions with Matt. Because at the end of season 2, as we know, it was confirmed to both parties that Frank knows that Matt is Daredevil. So they can speak normally without all the secrecy, and I like that. And that is it for the old crew. So let's talk about some new characters, shall we? So here we go. Alright, new characters are kind of a problem with this season because, Matt's side anyway, that is the problem. So let's get started with that one. Starting off, I'm just gonna say the actors, the character, and also then what the character does in the show. And then I'll talk about all 3 of these characters simultaneously because they share one big issue that I can do. Starting off, we have Margarita Leviva as Heather Glenn, the love interest of Matthew Murdock, and she's also a therapist connected to Wilson Fisk and his wife Vanessa. Then we have Kirsten McDuffie, portrayed by Nikki M. James, who is a former New York assistant district attorney and has become Matthew Murdock's new law partner. At the law firm, Murdock and McDuffie, where Matt and Kirsten now work. And then finally we have Cherry, a retired police officer who works as an investigator for Matt Murdock. And those are the 3 characters that are on Matt's side. And they have one big problem, which is underdevelopment. They don't really get developed at all. I've seen a lot of people online say that they don't like the new characters, which I think is very annoying. However, the thing is that they do is they talk only about the Daredevil ones, not the Kingpin ones. And then I agree, because the new characters in Daredevil Born Again aren't really that good. Kirsten is basically a knockoff Foggy version, but not as cool. Then we have Heather, who is just a love interest, so I guess you could kind of see her as a knockoff Karen Page, even though she has none of the charm and none of the awesomeness that Karen Page has. And then finally we have Cherry, who is kind of a combination of 2 characters in the sense of like the fact that he helps Matt. It's kind of like Mahoney in the Daredevil show. You know how Foggy always paid him off with cigars, and also Foggy, but that is something that is more spoiler territory. So I'm not gonna say why, but if you know, you know. But that's because of the fact that they are new characters meant to replace the old ones, because the old ones were never supposed to be here. However, I will say this, when the new people take over, they actually try their hardest at giving, like, Cherry is a character that is just like a non-character. But then in episode 8, it's like, oh, so you actually can, you know, be more important. A little bit. They give him a little bit, which kind of gives me hope for the next season to potentially be able to elevate these characters or just write them out entirely because they aren't necessarily needed. But that is my opinion of them. They are whatever characters. I did not really feel a strong connection towards them. I don't hate them. They're just whatever characters. Alright, look, as long as Matt Murdock is in the scene, because when he's interacting with these three people, he is usually in the scene, or Wilson Fisk is in the scene, then it's like I can focus on those actors and characters instead of like the new ones. So then, where there is a good side, there is also a bad side. However, it seems that I have entirely forgotten about Vanessa, who is in this show as well, and she has some marriage problems with Wilson Fisk because of the fact that Wilson Fisk has been flaunting about the MCU for a while, like Hawkeye and Echo. Vanessa's been kind of lonely during that part. She hasn't really been part of his life. She didn't know if he was ever going to return to her or if he was gonna turn up dead in that sense. However, she has been taking care of Fisk's criminal enterprise and has done a really good job, but now kind of needs to back off because of the fact that Fisk is running for mayor. And initially they had someone else, Sandrine Holt, cast as her because of the reboot stuff. But then Ayelet Zurer, I got no idea. She came back as Vanessa. And to be honest, she is a big presence. Because like in season 3 of Daredevil, she got introduced to Fisk's criminal underworld. And the fact that she is right now running it, I actually like her. Because of the fact that I feel like it fits her character very well. But now let's talk about the new characters on the Fisk side, shall we? Starting off with the least important one, we have Sabrina Guevara. Look, I'm terrible with names. As Sheila Rivera. She is the mayoral campaign director for Fisk, and she is kind of the most human one out of the 3 characters that Fisk has around him, because when Fisk is doing things, Sheila's kind of like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't, alright, like maybe you just should not do this kind of stuff, let's be honest here. What you're doing here is stupid, but she can't say that because it's still Kingpin, so you don't say that. But yeah, but also she is not 100% good. Then we have Artie Frushan, sure, as Buck Cashman, Fisk's right-hand man, or as you may call him as well, Fisk's Wesley. He is basically the new Wesley. If things need to get done, Buck will get them done. And while Buck doesn't get a lot of backstory on him or story on him at all, the actor portrays him very well, and he just does the jobs that need to be done. He is basically a criminal for Fisk, but not officially, obviously. But I liked him a lot because of the fact that he just gets things done. And then finally we have Michael Gandolfini as Daniel Blake. Basically, he becomes Fisk's protege. He becomes the son Fisk never had later on in the show. And I like him. I like the way that he grows into the character that he is at the end of the season. Because like at the beginning, he is nervous, but basically he becomes the miniature Fisk by the end of the season, working for Fisk. Really well done. There was one thing that happened in this season where I was kind of iffy on, because it just felt kind of weird. But after that, you know what? He did a fantastic job. I liked him in this role. So then there are 2 more characters that I can talk about. Obviously, this is the first one I'm going to talk about. Now, this is an actor who, sadly enough, back in December of 2023, passed away. R.I.P. the boy. I never have seen him in my life, and now I'm watching The Rookie, and I've seen him as well. His name is Camar de los Reyes, and he portrays Hector Ayala, also known as the White Tiger. He gets a little storyline to his name, and the actor knocks it out of the park. I even learned about the Cookie Frog. That was actually pretty cool. I never knew there was a frog named Cookie, but hey, you know what? I'm not here to question the diet of a frog. If a frog wants to eat cookies, that's his business, okay? You can do whatever you want. But yeah, anyway, he does a really good job as White Tiger. And I can't really say anything about White Tiger outside of the fact that he is a vigilante who gets powers from an amulet, which actually the show does not go around. Like, Matt in a courtroom scene straight up brings up the amulet like it's just a regular thing. Ah, yes, an amulet that gives you superpowers. Like, what? You can't... The fact that they were able to just bring that up in such a serious manner is just such a cool thing. But basically, I guess he came around after Daredevil Season 3, like in between the seasons, and he's been around kind of vigilanteing the streets as well. And I like the storyline that he gets, mainly Episode 3, which was a highlight of the old crew. The White Tiger storyline was actually made by the old people. But I will give them credit. They did a good job with the White Tiger storyline. But the main part of the storyline is in Episode 3. And Kamar acts so well in this series. The way that he talks about it. And then next up, the final character that I can talk about is Muse. Now, I am not gonna give the actor props for once. Which may sound a little bit weird. But I just can't, because that's the whole point. You're not really supposed to know who he is until like episode 7, because that is his big episode, I guess. But Muse is in this series, and he is the biggest negative part of this whole season, as I have seen online. When it was announced that Muse was gonna be the villain, which by the way is a villain that was created in 2018, I think it was. Nope, 2016, my apologies, but it was created after Daredevil had started. However, what they do with him is they kind of give him the story. Like, initially, he is really cool, and I will say that right now. But after a while, they go in and make him kind of like a villain of the week character, which makes him kind of feel weak. And that storyline does not end well. As people have stated, episode 7 is, for a lot of people, the worst episode in this season. I don't really know if I have one of those, but it is a strong contender for the worst episode of the season. And that's just because of the way that they handled Muse. It wasn't handled well at all. I liked Muse. I liked the way that he moved when he fought Daredevil, at least in their first fight, because that was done by the new crew. But when Daredevil and Muse face off against each other in the first time, the way that Muse moves, it's kind of creepy as well, and I like the way that they added that. The second time, not so much, because it was done by the old crew, but still, there you go. But I will still give props to the actor for portraying Muse, even if the writing for Muse, sadly enough, is a downgrade. However, as they say, Muse will return in Season 2, according to what has been said on Twitter. Muse will be back next season, so I guess maybe we'll get more of Muse then. And that is the end of the cast talk, and overall, this season wasn't the best. I very much enjoyed it. I really liked it. It is the second best season on Disney Plus right now from the Disney Plus original stuff, but that's not saying much because everything else on Disney Plus is kind of in garbage, except for Loki Season 2, so there's not really any competition, but this is still better than most of the stuff on Disney Plus, except for Loki Season 2. However, how does this season stack up to the old stuff? Not just Daredevil, but the whole Netflix stuff, and I will say it is kind of on the lower end. It very much is on the lower end. I would say that it is worse than, I think, everything except for Iron Fist Season 1. Or on the level of some of the stuff, but it is definitely way better than Iron Fist Season 1. But there's stuff on Disney Plus that's better than Iron Fist Season 1. Sadly enough, people never checked out Season 2. But overall, I very much enjoyed this season. So I guess we're just gonna head straight into that final verdict. So my final verdict for Daredevil Born Again Season 1 is going to be an 8 out of 10. But a low 8 out of 10. I wasn't too hyped about this season, like, because of the fact that it was stitched together. But weirdly enough, even though it was stitched together, it still feels like it was cohesive in a way. Not as well as it should, obviously, but it still felt better than the normal stuff that Marvel stitches together. Because normally, look at Doctor Strange and all the other stuff. Doctor Strange 2, by the way. But normally when Marvel stitches stuff together since Endgame, they haven't really been good or at all, you know. They've just been why. But this one actually, like I said, the new team did give it their all in order to make it seem like one storyline, even though it was multiple storylines kind of smashed together. I feel bad for Frank Castle, man. Every time Frank Castle appears in a Daredevil thing, apparently it's just doomed for failure, which kind of makes me not want him to return in Season 2, because that might actually mean that Season 2 is going to be fantastic. However, the next season is going to be done by the new team, and I have full faith in them. So, let me know what you guys thought of Season 1 of Daredevil Born Again in the comment section down below. Try to keep it spoiler free, please, for the people who have not seen Daredevil Born Again Season 1. And in an hour or so, I will upload, or half an hour or something like that, I don't know. I will upload a spoiler talk, so then you can talk about all the spoilers. But tell me what you guys liked and didn't like. My favorite episode might have actually been the last episode, and my least favorite episode is probably episode 7, Art for Art's Sake. But Straight to Hell is my favorite episode, because it is really good. But so is episode 8. But with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. And if you did, please like button, subscribe if you're new, if not already, turn on notifications. Don't forget to check out the Let's Play channel, link in the description and at the end of the video. And I'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow for another Pokemon episode talk, and I will be seeing you guys Saturday for the review of Super Screamer from Transformers Armada. And also next week on Thursday, your regularly scheduled MCU project will be back in full action. So I'll see you for all of that. Bye!